cancer is a very scary word to hear as a diagnosis. It can feel like a death sentence. But the 5-year survival statistics for women with early stage non-metastatic breast cancer are close to 100%. That's pretty good, right? But my risk, though, is somewhat more than the norm because I've got a mutated BRCA gene that makes cancer more likely. And I've had breast cancer twice, on the left side in 2007 and on the right in 2014. So today I want to talk about what I did to try to prevent a recurrence and promote vibrant good health. Now, I did make some contrarian decisions that even my physician at the time didn't agree with. It was the second time that I had breast cancer. It was after Angelina Jolie had gone public with her BRCA gene issue and told everybody that she'd had prophylactic bilateral mastectomies to avoid getting breast cancer. And she told us that her mother had died of cancer. So the doctors at that point were very, very much more likely to advise people to have mastectomies. And my doctor advised me to have a mastectomy after the second instance of breast cancer on the right side, and I refused. I did my research, and for my particular situation, it seemed like there was not much difference in survival rates between people who had lumpectomies and people who had mastectomies. And what I didn't like, not only did I not really want to go through that kind of operation, but also there's an awful lot of problems with breast implants. Breast implant illness is very real. And Nicole Daruda's breast implant illness problem website, she's got a website and a Facebook group as a support group for all kinds of people who've had problems with this. And the Facebook support group to date has over 200,000 members. So this is a big deal. So because of this, a lot of women are choosing to go flat after mastectomy surgery to avoid issues with reconstruction. But one thing that I did do that Angelina Jolie did not really emphasize, another risk of this BRCA gene profile is ovarian cancer. And that risk is a lower risk than breast cancer, but the ovaries are tiny little organs in the middle of the breast cavity. And you rarely find it until it's gone pretty far. And so it can be very, very serious and life-threatening. It is a more life-threatening form of cancer than breast cancer. So I decided that I would go for an oophorectomy, which is the removal of the ovaries and the fallopian tubes. Now, my sister, who has the same gene profile, she went for a full hysterectomy. I chose not to do that because I felt that the uterus holds everything in place, and I thought it would be a better option for me to just go for the oophorectomy. Funny name, but that was what the operation was called. But I held off doing that until after menopause because I didn't want to be thrown into a very nasty artificial menopause either. But I was going to leave it. But then I went to a wedding and spoke to these friends of the family. And I spoke to one lady, and she told me about 3 friends she had who had breast cancer, because I said I'd just had breast cancer. And so 3 women that had breast cancer, and they were fine. And then a few years later, they died from ovarian cancer. So for me, this was God telling me, hey, you better go and get those ovaries removed. So I did. And I'm glad that I did, because at that point, now I don't have to worry about it. And I think that that's a big risk. And Angelina Jolie's mother did not die of breast cancer. She died of ovarian cancer. I don't think people know about that. But I did a lot of things to try to prevent getting the cancer back. I'm also known as the flying bras lady. Why is that? Because I encourage women to ditch their bras because of the bra and breast cancer link. And one of the 70 books that I read for my to research my breast cancer book was this one, Dressed to Kill: The Link Between Breast Cancer and Bras, by Sidney Ross Singer and his wife Soma Grismeyer. And why is that a problem? What is the problem with bras? Well, bras are constricting your breasts, and they constrict the lymph flow in your breasts. And what happens is that toxins, waste products, they tend to collect They collect in the fat tissues of the body. And where do we women have fat tissues? In our breasts. And how is it normally flushed out? By the lymph system. But if you have a tight bra and you're wearing it for many hours a day, that stops the lymph from moving, and people get breast pain, they get cysts, and they can get cancer. And there are some there's a lot of research out there. There are a lot of peer-reviewed studies that show a very significant link between bras and breast cancer. In fact, according to Sidney Ross Singer, the link between bras and breast cancer is stronger than the link between smoking and lung cancer. And when he and his wife were doing research in Fiji, they found that in Fiji, amongst the women who never wore bras because they didn't even know what the garment did, the incidence of breast cancer was the same for men as for women. That's a big deal. How many men do you know with breast cancer? I don't know any. How many women do you know with breast cancer? Actually, I know one man because he had a breast cancer podcast that I was on. But apart from that, I don't know anybody. So there is a big connection between bras and breast cancer. So what I would advise you to do is just what I do here. Throw away your bras. You don't need them. Throw them away. You have to wear a bra, wear it as little as possible, and make sure it's not super tight. I mean, I remember my mom, she had these welts on her shoulders and under her arms, and all. What the hell is that doing to your body? So throw your bras away, or just wear them. Okay, if you're doing sport and you need it, or you are heavily endowed, I get it, but don't sleep in them. Take them off when you get home. Make sure they're really well fitting and not super tight. That's what I would advise. So that's the bra thing. Now, the other thing that I did was I was very, very careful about 4 things that I did for prevention: diet, exercise, reducing stress, and sleep. Those are important things to be aware of. And so the diet, I'm mostly paleo, and I am not in favor of the vegan diet. At least for me, it doesn't work. Plant milks are ultra processed. Seed oils, particularly canola oil, are really not great for you. Canola oil is known as rapeseed oil. In England, it comes from the rapeseed plant. It was developed as an engine lubricant. Just watch a video to see how it's produced, and you won't want to eat it. It's created in a heavy-duty industrial process and is truly suited to be in a car than in your body. My view is it's rapeseed oil because it rapes your body if you consume too much of it. And check the ingredients on your packaged food, because more often than not, you'll find canola oil in there. And so avoid ultra-processed food that's packed with dyes, chemicals, and seed oils with minimal nutritional value. So for me, as a 2-time breast cancer survivor, sugar is actually the main enemy. Sugar is really not good for you. I mean, for example, when I was doing PET scans to see if I had any cancer in other parts of the body, how do they track that? They use glucose. They use a sort of, I think it's like radioactive glucose in there that lights up when it comes across a cancer, because sugar loves cancer and cancer loves sugar. So what do you want to do? You want to reduce your sugar intake, and don't just go for the artificial sweeteners, because many of those are carcinogenic and best avoided. Splenda and sucralose, NutraSweet, those kinds of things. Cyclamate we used to have, and saccharin, all of those things, they find they really have some very bad health problems. So I would just, if you do have to have sugar, fruit sugar, and as little as you can manage, or honey, but as little as you can manage. The other thing that I do is I avoided big pharma drugs as much as possible. I try to do things as naturally as I can, but I did do chemo. I negotiated the cocktail. I didn't go for the adriamycin that my doctor wanted to give me. I had carboplatin and Taxol instead, because adriamycin is they call it the red devil, and it's pretty heavy duty in terms of the effects on the heart and the circulation. And I had heart issues in my family. I did not want to take that drug. But for my particular type of cancer at the time, carboplatin was actually a better option, and my doctor agreed to change that cocktail. The other thing I did was radiation as well, but at the same time, I did a ton of alternative therapies to try to get those toxins out of my system afterwards. I didn't go for antidepressants that the doctors were trying to push on me. Every time I went to an appointment for with the oncologist, my checkup, I had to fill out a form about how depressed I feel. And the aim of that was to see whether they could prescribe me with antidepressants. I wasn't going to take those because the side effects of those, from my research, are actually worse than the antidepressants, than the depression. And outdoor exercise, for me, and in many peer-reviewed studies, has been shown to be way more successful for dealing with depression than these antidepressants. And you can't even get off them because the withdrawal symptoms can create more mental health problems than you had when you started. There's so much out there, but the mainstream media is not covering this issue as much as they should. Same for the bra and breast cancer issue. If you Google it, the only study that'll come up is one that says that there is no link between bras and breast cancer. The Hutchinson study from 2014, which had no proper a control group of women who didn't wear bras, to compare to the ones who did wear bras, be like studying the effects of smoking without comparing smokers to non-smokers. And it only looked at postmenopausal women in whom the effects were much weaker because of something called survivor bias. People who might have died off earlier are not going to be included in the study. So there was that. But exercise is a key part. And I was saying that exercise is also a wonderful mood booster, especially if it's outdoors in nature and you're breathing fresh air rather than sitting indoors and depressed, watching TV, lying in a bed, and spooning ice cream. That is not going to help you. You really want to get out there and smell the roses. And, I don't do much heavy impact stuff, but mainly walking, swimming, Qigong every day. And it's great for preventative health. And it really, really, really boosts the mood. Now, what about sleep? Well, most of us don't get enough sleep, and sleep is vital for replenishing the body. And for example, did you know that for driving, lack of sleep is worse than being under the influence of alcohol in terms of how impaired you are? So don't rely on sleeping pills. As Arianna Huffington says in her excellent book, The Sleep Revolution, they too can have nasty side effects. So good idea not to have your phone in the bedroom, no screen time 2 hours before bed, no tough topics to discuss with your partner when you're having pillow talk. Leave uncomfortable conversations to the daytime when you're rested. So it's all about relaxing and closing the day and putting your mind in a good mood to sleep. Maybe meditate before you go to bed. That's going to get you in the mood for it. So finally, I'm going to talk about stress, because stress has been proven to cause disease of all kinds. So I have made reducing stress in my life a priority. I mean, obviously, there's a whole lot in life that we have to do whether we like it or not. But there are also responsibilities that we can choose to take on or not to take on. For those kinds of things, I will always ask myself, is this something I enjoy? Will it add to or reduce my stress? Sometimes I have to remind myself that no is a complete sentence, because people will always try and ask you to do stuff. For instance, I love my baby granddaughter, but I've made it clear that I'm not on call as babysitter on demand. Or if somebody asks me, for example, to proofread a book they've written, because I do proofreading and editing, it has to be a book I would have wanted to read anyway. And one important thing, cultivate laughter, joy, and community, and that really helps dissipate stress. Laughter therapy is so powerful. And when I was going through breast cancer treatment, that's all I watched, comedies. I stopped watching the news because it's all bad news. They're not going to cover anything that's good news because it's too boring. Nothing happened today. That's not news. I wanted to laugh. I tried to surround myself with people who would uplift me and make me laugh, because, if you don't laugh, you cry. So that being said, cancer is a crapshoot and there are no guarantees. There's no one size fits all treatment or prevention plan. And how a woman decides to deal with it is a very, very personal decision. So I'm not a doctor. I can only tell you what I chose to do, which may or may not work for you. So I don't know, did I make the right decisions? All I can say, to quote Monty Python, and I've got the Spam-A-Lot badge here to show you, I'm not dead yet. So, and do check out
awesome.
check out my cancer stuff page on my website, cjauthor.com. You'll find a ton of resources there. So just go to cjauthor.com and select CJ's Cancer Stuff from the main menu.